Today, the Feast of the Body and Blood of Christ was created in the 13th century after a Eucharistic miracle in central Italy took place. And the Pope established it as a reminder to us to always hold to that original belief of the disciples of Jesus as testified for us in St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, that we would always hold that the Eucharist we celebrate is truly the body and blood of Jesus Christ, even though under the appearance of bread and wine. As we listen to that familiar gospel passage from the Bread of Life discourse, we tend to domesticate it too much. When Jesus stood before kosher law-keeping fellow Jews and said, "This is my flesh and you're going to eat it," and literally said, "Munch, chew, and gnaw it," they were like, "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" It looked like they were going to lose their lunch. They were shocked. But we're not. But Jesus did not back down. And so we have to know that this is his intention. But it's a challenging belief for many to hold. Many more, and maybe some among you, are comfortable believing that the bread and wine consecrated here at Mass is rather only a symbol of the Lord's presence among us, his people, and a reminder of his promise to be with us. But when many are ready to abandon that belief in what Jesus himself stated about the Eucharist before he died, he tends to send us signs that call us back to what he asked us to believe about this, the sacrament of all our sacraments. This kind of a sign was received in 1996 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, when Jorge Bergoglio, now known to us as Pope Francis, was Archbishop there. A consecrated host was found in the Church of St. Mary. It had been discarded by someone, placed in what is called the bobesh, or the cup that holds a candle. And it must have been there for a while, because it was even dust covered. And so it was brought by a faithful parishioner to the pastor, who did what we are instructed to do in those situations. He put it into a container of water and put that container in the tabernacle in order that that host would dissolve, and once properly dissolved, could be disposed of in that special sink that we have in every sacristy called a sacrarium that goes directly into the ground. However, better than a week later, when the priest opened the tabernacle to see if the host had sufficiently dissolved, he was very surprised to see that indeed it had not. And instead, it was intact and seemed to be forming what looked to him like a red blood clot. He then informed his archbishop, who asked that that host be professionally photographed and then placed in a secure location and checked on later. And indeed, that was done only to discover that it remained intact, but that clot-like substance continued to develop. Staying in water for over 3 years, in 1999, a small portion of it was sent to forensic scientists in New York. The report from those medical experts came back stating that this is cardiac tissue from a man, which amazingly had not decomposed in spite of being stored in distilled water for over 3 years. More amazingly, The tissue was found to contain white blood cells, which would normally disappear very shortly after the death of any living being, proving that the sample was actually living tissue when it was originally discovered. The white blood cells infiltrating the tissue suggest that the man to whom this heart belonged was undergoing great suffering, including severe physical and emotional stress. The blood type of the man was found to be AB, the rarest among human people, but common in the Middle East. And curiously, we should note, the very same blood type that has been discovered to be on the face cloth of Oviedo and the Shroud of Turin. If you want to learn more and see how this particular miracle compares with several others across the ages that have been studied by scientific methods, again, I recommend that book to you by Dr. Franco Serafini titled Our Cardiologist Examines Jesus. You can get it on Amazon. But after comparing this miracle with investigations into 4 other such occurrences, that one from the Middle Ages, 3 more recent, Dr. Serafini had to conclude that this tissue in Buenos Aires comes from the same heart tissue in all the others. It's heart tissue that has been beating and suffering across the ages and around the world, and he suggests it probably will until the end of time, which gives us all a new and deeper appreciation of why this Friday we will celebrate the annual feast of Christ's Sacred Heart. The truth is that this miracle reminds us that when we receive communion, though it may still look to us like a simple wafer of bread, it is not. It is really Jesus himself, body, blood, soul, and divinity, coming to dwell in us through communion. Jesus is what he said he would be, the living bread coming down from heaven. So let us feed on his flesh, just as he instructs us to do, and to do so with the greatest fear and reverence, and thereby allow Jesus to continue to transform our hearts to become like his own heart, so that we can truly keep his great commandment that we would love one another as he has loved us, thus sharing in his life of selfless love here and now. It is then that we can hope to share in it forever hereafter. At this time, I invite those who have come forward to serve our community of faith as special ministers of Holy Communion to the altar step, that they might be properly installed for this important service.